Well, welcome students to our lecture in Methods of Teaching. Lecturer Ahmed Abdel Hamza from Department of English, College of Education for Human Sciences, University of Babylon. This lecture is targeted for third year classes for Methods of Teaching. And today we are going to discuss one of the interesting topics that are related to English language teaching and learning. That is one of the skills that are related to language, that is speaking skill. Now, the first thing that we are going to discuss is, what is a speaking skill? It is defined as the skill which allows us to communicate effectively. It gives us the ability to convey information verbally and in a way that the listener can understand. In this way, we have to consider that verbal language is one of the kinds that are targeted with this speaking skill. It means that when we talk about verbal language, is different from non-verbal language, that is using signs. And instead, in speaking, what do we have? A verbal skill that involves words and sounds. Speaking is a production skill that involves listening skill. What does this mean? There is a relationship between listening and speaking. The way that once we listen and comprehend something, we can react to this. And with this, we have some sort of controversial with speaking. Speaking is something productive in comparison with listening as a passive skill. Without listening, speaking is not possible, and the relationship between these two skills is corresponding. The role of speaking is as interaction, is mostly of a social conversation. Speaking skill is a social activity. It means that no one can speak to himself. It means that there must be a community in the way that we are going to practice language. The role of speaking is as interaction, is mostly of a social conversation. It reflects the roles and the relationships of the speaker in a social setting. What does it mean? In speaking skill, we have the speaker and listener. They are exchanging roles. The speaker will not be a speaker for all the time, and the listener the same thing. It means that with speaking, we have exchanging roles. Okay? For example, chatting to a fellow passenger, telling a friend about an amusing experience, etc. Are the interaction that we conduct through speaking. Every normal adult can speak in her native language without effort, and this skill is a natural one. This is very important. To compare speaking in a native language with speaking in a foreign language, there is a big difference here. With speaking in native language, we have something natural. We do it the way that we do everything, so it happens naturally. But speaking in a foreign language is not a natural, and it requires conscious effort throughout the whole process. What does it mean? Speaking in a foreign language is something related to the intention. It means that I intend just to learn a specific language. In this way, I have to exert an effort with this. So we cannot do this naturally. But the way that we are going to train, we are going to have certain courses just to improve this skill. It means that there must be an effort. Yes. So we move to another point. That is what? Requirements of speaking skill. Of course, for this skill, there must be some sort of requirements. What we are going to prepare ourselves just to have. The first thing, that is language background. What does it mean? It means that I have to be exposed to language. I cannot speak the language without having an information about. There must be something related to structure. That is, grammar, the rules, the way that we are going to build or construct sentences, or things that are related to the way that we are going to have certain construction in relation to language. This is one. And second, we have vocabulary. With vocabulary, that is what? Words and expressions that we are going to use in speaking. The way that we have to acquire these things and we have to practice these things. In vocabulary, we have three categories. That is, words that to be considered as unknown, and words that we know but we are not using them, and words that we know and we use. In this case, we have three circles. So our roles, just to improve our speaking, is just to maximize the words that we know, and we have to use them in different situations. This is the first requirement. Then we have the second requirement, that is training. Training means having exercises and practices, and later we are going to consider what kind of exercises or practices that we are going to have in speaking skill. Of course, we have different exercises, different practices in which we are going to do it in a community. That is, when we have something in relation to speaking, we have to do these exercises in groups. It cannot be done individually. The third requirement is what? Performance. That is what? We are not going to use, we are not going to have language without use. So the way that we are going to have a speaking skill, it means that we have to use language. The way that when we want just to improve our speaking, there must be some sort of acting. We cannot do speaking without speaking. The fourth requirement, that is the environment. I have to have an environment. I mean, the way, the setting, in which situation that we are going to use language. There must be, let me say, a community in which I'm going to practice the language. In this case, you will have to consider that with environment, there must be an environment suitable to the level of the speaker. I cannot speak language without having an idea that my level is low. And in this case, I cannot use language without considering the level. So the suitable environment will be beneficial or useful to the speaker to improve speaking skill. We move to the third point, which is related to types of speaking exercise in the way that we want just to see in which way that we are going to have practices in speaking skill. The first one is discussion. What's meant by discussion? Discussion, it is a social activity that can be practiced through groups. There must be a topic to initiate so that different speakers can interact and communicate with the given topic. What does this mean? Here with discussion, of course, there must be a topic. It means that we have a subject to talk about, and this subject can be what? Can be dealt with in a group. It means that we don't have a discussion without a group. In this case, you have to consider that the way that we discuss is some sort of interaction. Somebody is having something just to say. Others are going to argue. They agree, they disagree, and they have some sort of negotiation and discussion. Different opinions are delivered and speakers may agree, disagree, or argue one another. It means that with discussion we have to use language in the way that we are considering the topic itself. It is not just to be, decided earlier to argue, or the topics will lead the group that they are discussing these topics just to do these roles. And with discussion, of course, there is some sort of self-expression. I'm going to deliver what I believe. I'm going to deliver the way that I'm going to convince the other side of what I believe. So things that are related to self-expression and the way that I'm going to defend my idea. This is one. Second, the way that I disagree or argue is related to the way that I understand others. Of course, nothing just to be the same. Things that to be decided earlier, whether I agree or disagree in the way that I'm going to to match what is to be said with the thing that I believe, and in this way I'm going to argue, to say yes, it's okay, or disagree, say no, I don't believe in this way, or argue, say well, it's okay, but what about these things? This is the way that we are going to do discussion. The second point is related to conversation. This is the second time that we are going to practice language. The most common kind of spoken language is conversation, when one person communicates through speaking to another person or to other people. There are patterns in conversation. There are certain devices that we use time and time again. What does this mean? With conversation, we have patterns. These are rules. And when we talk about rules of speaking, it means that there are things that are to be acceptable in the way that we are going to use language in dialogues. There are recognized expressions of introducing situations, and these things are very important. When we are talking about dialogues, we are talking about two important things. The first thing is a situation. What's meant by a situation? That is what? The way that I use language, or the setting that we are going to have a dialogue. In this case, we are talking about certain expressions in relation to the situation. For example, if we are at a restaurant or booking a hotel room, these are situations. But with these situations, there are certain expressions that are acceptable by the society, that the language that we use is to be considered. So all in all, when we are talking about these two types of exercises, we are having speaking activities in the way that that language is used. To sum up all these things, it is to be considered that speaking skill is something related to language practice, the way that we produce, the way that we are going to improve this skill. And with this we finalize, we end with this skill. Of course, we have some sort of, let me say, things that are related to the skill itself in relation to the type of the learner. Of course, speaking in the native language is different from speaking in the foreign language. And with these exercises, of course, both are used. But here, for foreign language learner, these points should be considered in the way that we have to use them in the training. Thanks a lot for your listening, and we hope that you get benefit from this lecture. Thank you.